Ask any guy in the gym, what's the best steroid for mass? 9 times out of 10, it's Deca. Strength turbos, joints feel brand new, and everyone's asking, what are you on? But here's the question nobody thinks about. Is that actually all muscle, or just rented mass that disappears the second you stop? Now, the clinical data shows Deca users gained almost 10 pounds in 10 weeks, but lost over 70 of it within 3 weeks of stopping. So what stayed behind wasn't new muscle fibers. It was mostly fluid and collagen in the tissue. So what the hell is going on here? And here's where it gets even worse. That swelling doesn't just vanish later because it creates problems while you're still on it. ApoB climbs, ferritin rises, prolactin increases, and the mood just crashes. So there's these two things happening. In the gym, you're feeling unstoppable, you're stronger, fuller, and finally bigger, but yet inside, the cost of all this is climbing faster than actual muscle tissue. However, Deca used correctly does have some value. Low doses can make training feel smoother, but caution lads, it's not real repair. And if you push too hard too soon, the risk of overload in that area climbs. So it's best seen as joint support, not a muscle growth driver. Now that's what Deca does to the body, but it doesn't stop there. It also reshapes what's happening upstairs. Inside the brain, dopamine is failing, and even calcium signaling is starting to weaken. A calcium signal? What is that? Think of it like a spark plug for your brain and your muscles. So it fires dopamine and drives contractions. That's why halfway through a cycle, motivation drops, pumps fade, and suddenly even watching Netflix feels like cardio. So if Deca's not building real muscle, what actually does? Well, most guys will think more gear, more size. Wrong, because muscle has different doors that it grows through, and the trick is to open them all up, not just kick the same one harder with a bigger dose. So these are the 3 ways that steroids build tissue. You got the classic DNA switches. Things like test, primo, nandrolone, tren, anavar, they bind to the androgen receptor, flip genetic switches, and tell DNA to make protein. Then you've got the rapid fire signals. That's things like anadrol and debol. Their metabolites hit extra pathways, which is why the effects are felt so immediate. And finally, you've got the unique lane. We've got winstrol here, and interestingly, it acts in subcellular spots which no other compounds touch. That's why that cosmetic pop when you're on winstrol is completely unmatched. So from all that info, let's now line those signals up side by side from a strict muscle growth standpoint. Combining test and primo, both genomic, both steady. You get lean, predictable growth, but the signals overlap. Doing test and Deca, well, that's the same lane again. Joints might feel smoother, but the growth machinery doesn't change. Test, primo, and microdose winstrol injection. Even microdosing winstrol, just using it pre-training, it's going to tweak ion channels and collagen turnover, creating harder, sharper muscle that shows up in the mirror without wrecking your joints. Then we've got test, tren, and anadrol. So you've got 2 completely different triggers firing at once. We've got the DNA transcription plus calcium and ERK, MAPK signaling. Now what the hell does that all mean? It means you've just smashed the growth accelerator switch. See the pattern here? The stacks that actually add lasting muscle combine signals, not just more milligrams of one drug. Okay, so how do you actually add size without getting fat and soft? Well, first, let's be real. If we're talking about Deca, no one was just using that. They're stacking it with other You got testosterone, obviously, but also growth hormone. And GH, that changes the whole equation because it decides where the food goes. So instead of shoving all the calories into fat stores, it partitions them into muscle. And if you want the 2025 upgrade for a lean cycle, retatrutide at a low dose. This will rein in appetite, stabilize blood sugar, and block fat spillover, while the growth hormone drives nutrients into tissues. Now let's be clear here. Test, tren, and anadrol will pretty much blow everything away if we're talking about muscle gains. But the cost of using those trio is going to be brutal. So based on everything that I've said so far, coming up now is a smarter 16-week lean mass framework. The first month involves, surprise, surprise, testosterone as a base for that steady androgen receptor drive. Primo then comes in. It's going to keep estrogen steady, has anti-bloat protection, and clean muscle gains that actually stays after the cycle's done. Growth hormone pre-bed, HCG. This keeps neurosteroids firing, so libido, mood, and focus don't flatline. Now this starting month is boring, and that's on purpose, because it's building a base brick by brick, not inflating a balloon. Weeks 5 to 8 show some progression where the primo might have a small bump if the blood work looks good, and that's 50 to 100 mg, not double the dose. Anavar comes in as a mild oral that still strongly binds to the androgen receptor. This gives clean growth signals without any heavy side effects. Growth hormone can be increased based on users' tolerance, and if things like fasting glucose, CRP, triglycerides, iron profile, and electrolytes are all balanced and looking good. Retatrutide at a very low dose. HCG can continue based on estrogen. Very low dose NPP or Deca. This is if any joint pain or injuries are holding the user back. Optional L-carnitine. This keeps fat burning in the background and will help recovery and endurance. Think of this stage as layering in new pathways while protecting connective tissue. Weeks 9 to 12. Test and primo stay steady as the foundation doesn't change. Anavar can stay in if you still want to keep pushing. This is where an optional burst comes in. Now Anadrol is not used every day. It's going to be pre-workout 2 to 3 times a week, so you can get that signaling needed, but not the everyday toxicity which Anadrol will give you. And once again, this is not for everyone. 99.9% out there don't need this. Anyway, the other bits and pieces like Deca, retatrutide, HCG, NPP if it was needed, can all stay in there at low dosages, holding steady. Before we move on, an optional bump at this point is for some users to increase the test. Here it's put up more for drive, but usually this is going to come with estrogen spikes, so making sure that estrogen is in the right place to add the test, but also factor in the ratio with the primo too. Now in the final stretch of this framework, this is where we lock in, and the user might want to choose one short-term lever if the labs are fitting. So 3 options. Anavar could be increased, Winstrol added at a low dose to give a sharper finish, or Anadrol if that wasn't previously used in the last month. And then the core of the cycle stays steady. And if joint insurance is needed, modern repair tools like BPC 157 or TB 500 can be added in accordingly. With all that being said, please don't copy this 16-week cycle blindly. The only way any of this makes sense is if you're running monthly labs like these and adjusting each move that you make to keep the side effect away from the stack that is being taken. The reality is most guys on a muscle building cycle will end up puffy, bloated, and higher body fat than they would probably want, because the idea is not to have the scale weight as the goal. The goal is to grow lean muscle tissue that lasts, and you get that by not copying the same old playbook. But don't get it twisted, Deca does have value. It is excellent for joint relief, but for actual muscle construction, there are better, safer tools that do exist, like test, primo, growth, various peptides, and food, as the best way to build muscle is going to be strategy. In any case, if you think you might need some help and guidance on your mission to level up, you can reach out. Below this video, in the description box, there's a link. If you hit that link, I will get back to you as fast as I can. Next up, the science of steroid bloat, estrogen, aldosterone, gut health, and the smart strategies that guys use to stay sharp and lean on a cycle. This is Dr. James. I'm out.